Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. Today we have a podcast listener, Jenn, with us. Jenn is in the United States and she is one of the winners of the draw. She submitted a review very kindly and her name got picked out of the randomized name selector. And so here we are to do a reading. Thanks, Jenn, for being here and thanks for submitting a review and listening to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. Okay, so everybody, we had our preamble before we pressed record. So I gave Jenn, my rundown whenever I do a reading for somebody of just the things that she needs to know. So we're just going to dive right in. And Jenn told me that she has a list of questions prepared. So I have no doubt this is going to be a good and juicy one. So let me know what you want me to look into. You can either tell me one question at a time, or you can just like read them all out and then we'll sort of weave our way through all of them in an organic fashion, however you prefer.
All right, one at a time, I think, because they might be connected, who knows? But I guess let's start with, I'm really interested. So when I was little, I had what I feel was a visitation by a very scary child at my window. I think over the years, I've chalked this up to being something I saw when I was little on the TV or something like that. I can't find it. I can't find it anywhere. And I'm wondering what that was. I just remember going to my window, seeing this really scary child and I remember it asking me, "It's okay. Can I come in? Let me in." I was scared. So I'm wondering what that was, if anything.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like we're going right into the juicy stuff.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So how old were you when that happened?
I was probably 4 or 5.
Okay. And do you remember what made the child look or seem scary?
Yeah. The child was really pale, black eyes.
I knew it. You saw a black-eyed child.
Yeah, really scary. Almost as pale as like you would think a vampire looked. And I know it affected me so deeply that even to this day, I have to sleep with my curtains closed and I have to wrap my blanket around my neck. So it made quite an impact internally, and just never shook it. Like I never could explain it.
Wow, that's so intense. Okay. I totally knew before. I should have just, rather than asking you to describe it, I should have just told you what I was seeing, but that's exactly, I was like, oh, she's seen a black-eyed, like, have you heard of the black-eyed children?
No.
Okay. It's a thing that people experience. Okay. I'm going to go into your Akashic records and just like verify and pull up more information. Maybe I'm wrong. The Akashic records might tell me that I'm wrong, but it just takes me a minute to tune in. Mhm. Yeah. So it is one of the black-eyed children. And so I'm kind of asking like, well, what is that? Like, what is like, what more can I give you to understand what those are? And they're not children. It's not, they present themselves as children, but they aren't actually children. And so it's not like a child that died under traumatic circumstances. That can happen, that like that child, kind of like has a creepy quality about it, but this is different. Um, it's not a human. It's not a human consciousness or human soul. It's a lower astral, basically like a lower astral demonic being, like a dark entity that takes the form of a child, um, basically to like appear both helpless and innocent. And um, that's always what they do. In every account that I've ever heard of it is they ask to be let inside. And um, basically, it feels like the reason that, people get the heebie-jeebies, like, I don't know if everybody does or not, because the only people that talk about it are the people that, noticed that there was something creepy and weird about this, this child. Um, so it's possible that some people who encounter them don't pick up on, like, don't see those dark eyes, don't see the creepiness, don't pick up on the creepiness. I'm not sure. But it feels like no matter how hard, like they try to make themselves look like innocent and harmless and helpless and like in need of something, um, they cannot mask the actual like quality of their energy. And that's why it comes through as black eyes. So they're really not trying to have black eyes. They're trying to hide it, but it just
Okay.
doesn't, there's nothing in there. Well, that's not true. This is where I'm like, what even is a soul? Like, it makes me want to back up and figure out the definition. So I was going to say there's no soul. I'm like, well, what is a soul? There is a consciousness, but it's a consciousness that is deliberately separated itself from the light. And so it needs a host, it needs a body, or it needs a physical space to occupy. It needs something to feed off of.
Okay. All right. Um, wow. Okay. Let's go to another question. This is a big one. Um, what is, if any, what is my karmic connection to my mother and father? Um, these relationships have been a little bit tumultuous, almost separate, completely separate. But there's got to be something there because or something that I need to learn from them. I don't know.
Okay. Were your mother and father separated?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm feeling your mom first, and just let me know if I'm feeling the correct person, the correct energy. It feels like you were closer with your mom, but that doesn't mean it was necessarily like an easy relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, it was.
And it feels like, are your parents alive?
They both are. Yes.
Okay. It feels like it's kind of closely enmeshed and entangled in I would say like almost like a narcissistic codependent kind of way. Like, um, the energy around it feels like your mom, for example, has spent a lot of her life or a lot of your life in like kind of a victim mentality, like in a looping sort of victim story, kind of feeling angry and feeling sorry for herself, but also feeling helpless and angry with herself and just like looping around in that a lot. And like heavily reliant on you for emotional stability as she is constantly on this roller coaster within herself.
Mhm.
And then, but part of that reliance on you feels like then you're not allowed to have any feelings, because then she kind of turns around and makes it about her and gets kind of like wounded about it, or just doesn't handle them well. Like if you have feelings, um, does that feel like I'm on the right track?
Yeah, that resonates. She's had a lot of trauma in her life and she's got a lot of mental health issues. I'm wondering if I'm carrying her trauma.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you are, but you're not required to. It's not a karmic contract for you to carry her trauma to the extent that you are. It feels more like that's what I mean when I use the word narcissist. I don't mean to knock your mom or anything like that, but she's just very, maybe in her unresolved trauma, she's very self-absorbed, but that doesn't mean she's like heartless or
Mhm.
uncaring or anything like that. It's just easy for her to make it about her because yeah, there's a lot of just a lot of emotional activity, it feels like. And so in the to the extent that you're carrying her trauma, it's almost like you were, I'll use the word groomed, but again, I don't think it was deliberate. But like groomed to carry her trauma, groomed to hold a lot of that emotional burden and be a force of stability. So kind of one of the ways that you are that emotional stability is by trying to take some of that off for her, but it's not really actually possible for you to do that. So what it feels like, um, sorry, the sun's in my face. Okay. It feels like really it slows you down and it holds you back a lot in life so far.
How do I release it?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna move my, just moved into a new office, so I'm not used to the angle of the sun. Do you live with her or close to her? Do you see her a lot?
I live close to her, but I do not see her a lot. I really feel like I have to protect my own energy. So I see her often, but not as much as not as much as I would like to, because I do need to protect my energy.
Okay. There's a lot of heart pain. Like when you were a little girl, did you feel like you watched her suffer?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of heart pain there. That's when you started carrying the trauma. It is like, oh man, it's so hard because I can really feel the helplessness of being little and feeling like you can't do anything because you're little, but loving your mom so much. Like there aren't even words for how much a little child loves their mother. And then having to watch her suffer and struggle. It's almost like you told yourself the only thing you could do was be there with her. And I don't know, like you weren't having a conversation with yourself, like you probably never said these words to yourself, but it was sort of a conclusion that you came to in your innocence, is like, you wish so much you could take away her suffering, but you couldn't, or take away her pain, but you couldn't. And so you could just be there with her, and you're still carrying that inner child wound. And that's where it feels like it really comes from. So even though now as an adult, you're trying to like hold better boundaries, the, like, let's say 7-year-old aspect of yourself is still right there, just like heart bleeding out all over the floor out of love for your mom and solidarity.
I meditate often and hug that child all the time.
Yeah.
Just don't know what else to do.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever tried connecting with your mom's soul? Like not the person she is, but her soul?
No.
What's her name?
Sharon?
Okay. It's taking me a minute because it's really complicated. There's so many emotions. It's very, very entangled. It's not like there's just one cord to cut. It's like so many.
Yeah.
And they're delicate. Like I don't want to just snip through all of them. I want to figure out like which ones can we dissolve? Mm. I think I have to approach it from a different angle. So
Okay.
maybe what we can try to do is look into, which I think is a different way of what you were asking initially, like the karmic connection, like maybe look into what is the reason that this was your experience with your mom
Okay. Yeah.
as a soul. Okay. Oh,
I'm sorry.
oh, no, it's okay. Now I get it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's
Mm.
not a big deal for me to feel it for a moment. It just makes me sad that you've been feeling this for a long time. So what I see is that there was another life that you had. Um, Maybe she was in it or not. I haven't looked that deeply yet, but basically where you were watching your house burn down and your loved ones were in there and you could not get them out. And so it's like echoing that, this feeling of helplessness of, because when I was trying to describe, there's many chords, and I also didn't want to snip them all because there's a part of you that is like, oh God, like I can't just let her just like, you can't just cut ties, even if it were just emotional, without something else happening first. Because there's just this feeling of like, I don't know, does that resonate with you? This fear, like I'm abandoning her, like she's never gonna,
Yeah.
she's just gonna stay stuck.
Yeah. I mean, I became the mother in our relationship growing up. I understand that. Um, yeah.
I think she was your daughter. I think that's part of it. Um, it's convoluted and there's a lot of moving energy. Okay, let's put a pin in it.
Mhm.
Move on to a different question, either the situation with your dad or a different thing altogether. And I have a feeling that some other information is going to be the key that kind of unlocks all that.
Okay. Um, I don't feel like I want to go into my father now. I think we'll go into a different question. Um, how how do I better align my soul purpose with my next career?
Okay, that's lighter.
Yeah, yes, let's give you a breather.
Do you know, like, do you feel like you know what your soul purpose is? And are you in the middle of transitioning careers?
No, I mean, yes and no. So I'm not sure what my soul purpose is. I feel like it is um, carrying the light to others somehow. Um, but I was guided to quit my career in September, and I feel like I've just had a huge block. Every time I go to apply for a job, there's something inside me that's like, no, no, don't do that. Don't do that. But I don't know what to do.
Okay.
I'm stuck.
Okay. So what was your career before?
I was an executive assistant.
Okay. What kind of tasks were you doing? Like an EA for whom or what kind of company?
It was a nonprofit behavioral health company, and I supported 2 directors, 6 program managers, and 11 clinics.
So it was like a lot of admin stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, that was the perfect career for a long time.
Mhm.
I can feel that. Okay. Stuff with probably both of your parents, but definitely your mom. You never even got to fully integrate like what you love doing. So that job was really perfect because you were good at it. You could go and be reliable and be
Mhm.
in a team of semi-functional professionals. And I don't know, it was like there was not, it feels like there was not a lot of emotion in it. It was more like pragmatic, practical, like mental organization.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and what I feel like wants to come through and be seen is that you have a very creative side that has really not been explored adequately.
That resonates definitely. Yeah.
So part of the block too is like almost like your soul really wants to put to rest, probably like definitely these things with your parents, but also potentially some other sort of like relationship things or patterns you've experienced, so that it can actually have the bandwidth freed up to explore your creativity and let your soul purpose come through organically. So then whenever you go to apply for a different job, it's your soul that's like, no, because you'll just end up fitting into that role, and
Yeah.
all those things that we need to explore won't have any space again. Do you do anything that is like any kind of craft or any kind of art?
I just started to look into stained glass, and took a class and felt really good, but not working. Glass is not cheap. So it's really hard to start a project at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have a family?
I have a partner and a kitty.
Amazing. It's wonderful. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So what's happening is you're operating under an a version of your identity that you're totally ready to outgrow. Or you basically have outgrown it, but you're kind of like still operating within those parameters because you're like, I don't know where I'm growing to, and I don't know where I'm going, and all that stuff. You're just on the verge of exploding into a whole almost like intensely psychedelic, like identity transformation experience. And I think you kind of know that. It's a little intimidating. And until you have kind of these things with your parents and certain of these like traumas healed, it feels like too big for you to handle. And so you're like playing super small and super, super safe. And you're a much bigger force than you have allowed yourself to see. Okay, so I'm glad we moved on to this question because it is going to help. I can tell it's going to help bring me back around to what needs to be seen around your mom so that we can release it. Okay, I'm just looking into your highest timeline. I feel like you are really like visual aesthetics is very strong in you. So, and I feel like you have a very successful career. You kind of have mogul vibes, like sort of like lady boss bitch kind of energy. Ultimately, when you sort of move past this band of trauma that needs to get integrated, and so much more of your energy is freed up for you to use in the way that is an actual alignment for you. I feel like what I see is something to do with, I think you end up either having your own business that's very successful, or you end up working for somebody else's successful business, but it's definitely not a nonprofit. It's definitely a profit driven, and that's a good thing. And it feels like kind of afraid that this is going to sound so out of left field to you right now. So just put it in your pocket and, whatever,
Okay.
like just see how it resonates in 10 years.
Okay.
But it feels like I can't quite put my finger on it. Like I want to say interior design. But I don't know that if that's actually it, or if I'm just seeing that you have like strong sort of luxury codes and within you. And so like I see you in a space that is very beautiful and very well thought out. And you definitely work with people, but I think your actual gift, whether it's through interior design or whatever, it has to do with like basically you're a consultant for people to, in a sense, do what I'm doing right now, only not necessarily in an Akashic reading way, but where you help them to tap into their highest vision and then actually bring it into reality, but through the aesthetics. So I could also, you could be, I don't think this is it because it feels more material and less digital, but another example would be like a brand consultant or like a website designer, but I don't really feel the digital aspect. I feel like it's more physical, in person, but it's really important because it's like you bring in the anchor pieces of somebody's highest vision in a physical aesthetic way that basically helps them to align with their soul purpose most clearly. I don't know if any of that resonates or makes sense for you where you're at right now, but that's what's coming through.
No, but it would make sense that I'm being led to do more creative things with my time. So
Yeah. How do you see yourself right now? Like,
I just feel stuck. I feel stuck. I felt like that for the last couple of years, just stuck. And I think that's why I found your podcast. I think that's why I went down this spiritual road, because there was no other logical solutions to what I was feeling.
yeah. Are your parents both, do they both struggle with money?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My father, I'm sure he does. I haven't spoken to him since I was about 18. He just, the second he stopped paying child support, just disappeared out of my life. So that relationship was weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, there's so many layers of so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, and there always are for people, but I could just feel like, whoa, we need to get you unstuck. Like we need to get you past
Yes.
this sticky part, and it's sticky.
Mhm.
Because the version of you that's on the other side is so very different from how you understand yourself now. For example, the reason I asked about money is because I feel like, are you living a kind of lower to middle class, like sort of lifestyle and like fairly, like like maybe you drive a commuter car, you there's, I wouldn't say that there's anything, it feels anyway in your field, like there's not a lot of luxury.
Mhm. It's very middle class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because I feel like are you a Capricorn or something?
No, I'm Leo rising, Scorpio, sun and moon.
Ooh, holy moly. Okay. And I'm just asking because I feel like a strong ambition in your energy. I don't know. I should just stop asking about zodiac signs because I never end up being right. But I feel like strongly ambitious, like the sky is really the limit for you in the best way. And you are meant to be experiencing more luxury. But I think that you are identifying with your, probably like your lineage money story. And so you are identifying in a very small kind of mediocre version of yourself, and just version of reality, version of life. Whereas the energy I pick up on in your highest timeline, a truer expression of yourself, is like super, just trying to find the right word. The opposite of mediocre. It's the opposite of mediocre, basically. I don't know what word that is right now off the top of my head. Okay, so let's try and go back into the stuff with your parents and just see if anything can move. Yeah, your soul, the reason that you are emotionally holding on to your mom is because of that life where you witnessed your house burning down, and it feels like either your children were in there or your child, somebody very important to you. Could have been like your partner. I'm not really sure. All I can feel is you just screaming while you're watching the house burn down, and it's devastating. It's absolutely like the intensity of the helplessness is so overwhelming. And so in this life, it's kind of like a microdose of that. It's not, thank God, it's not as extreme as that, but on an emotional level for your soul, it is hitting that same note of extremity, even though there's a disconnect. Like there's not the external things to basically activate that level of like screaming helplessly, but it's still that feeling of like, I can't, it's like a helplessness mixed with like, I can't turn away. I can't stop looking. I can't, like, what are you going to do? Like, if you think about that lifetime or somebody living through that experience, what are you going to do? Just watch the house burn down and be like, well, I guess I just like better get on with my life because the house is burnt to a crisp now. No, you're paralyzed. You're stuck there in that, experience.
Amy, one of the questions I wrote down for you was, where does my fear of loss come from?
Okay. All right. We're covering it. Yeah. Yeah. It's that. It's so painful. It's so painful to tune into. Oh, okay. So I don't think it had to do with your mom. I don't think your mom was in that life, but I do feel like she was your daughter in one life. And when I tune into her soul, now I can't read her Akashic records, but I can sort of see them in a blurry way through yours.
Was my partner there? He has a fear of fire that is unexplained.
Yeah, I think he died in the fire. I think you were the only one that survived. Like, I think everybody. And it was so devastating, just utterly devastating. I'm just going to look at that a little bit more closely. I honestly think you only had one child. Are the two of you afraid to have children in this life? Do you want to have children, or?
We're terrified.
Yeah.
We're terrified to have children.
Yeah. 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 I think you only had one child, and I think he died going in to try and get your child out. Oh, there's a lot to go into. I'm really glad we're doing this. I'm sorry that you've been carrying this around for so long. Okay. When I tune into your mom's soul, I feel like the cycle that she's stuck in with my limited ability to view it all and view the whole picture is, I think in a more recent life in terms of chronology, she was a heroin addict, and a female heroin addict, and like just was in a really bad place. It was really rough. Where, I think she like turned tricks to get money for drugs or just get drugs, and like feels like a really, really rough life, kind of basically homeless, like just sort of being in hotels, like sleeping wherever the person she was sleeping with was sleeping, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if you were in that life or not. I think you were. I think that's the life. I think that she was your daughter, and it was just so hard to watch her go down that road. And that's also a big part of why in this life I don't know, like you're also afraid you're going to lose her because you lost her in that life. Like eventually that lifestyle took her. She didn't have a long life, basically. And so but when I feel into it, it's not so much like in this life you're afraid that you're going to lose your mom in terms of like she's going to have a mortal death, although obviously she will, and probably you do have that concern, but that just feels more like a normal concern. It's more like you're afraid for her soul. You're afraid for her consciousness, that if you aren't there with her and for her, like trying to hold up the burden of her trauma, that she will basically like be crushed by the weight of it, and she'll never get out again. So it feels like there's that deep fear. And then there's the like that intersects with the fear of, or just that helpless feel. Both of them are helpless feelings.
Between her and my partner, I all the time there's scenarios that pop into my head. I don't know where they come from, and it's just it's loss. What happens if I lose them? Like, and it'll rip my heart open. And
Yeah.
I've sat with it, and I have no idea where these are coming from. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can feel it. And I can feel how you really have almost no energy to put towards creating the life you actually want to create, because so much is going to processing things you didn't even live through in this life.
Yeah.
But that are like triggered in this life. Okay. So the thing you need to know about your mom, and this is probably true for most people, like it would probably be a generality for anybody who's listening to the podcast, but maybe not in every scenario, I don't know. But in your mom's case, what it feels like is you have to let her go, because you have to let her hit rock bottom. She has to. And it's going to take a lot of inner strength to, and that doesn't mean let her go, like stop seeing her or cut her out of your life. It's an emotional release. So basically, if this is the way you can maybe understand it, in the places that you picked up the burden of her trauma as a child and you've continued to carry it, and you're kind of like, basically you're just emotionally holding space for her in her woundedness. That's how you're carrying her trauma. Just where you're like deeply, like your heart is very open to her, as it should be, but it's in in a way that you want to prevent her from having to basically feel it all on her own. But the great irony is that it's not helping her, because she still has to feel it all on her own, just as we all do. And so in a way, it's kind of, does she have addictions in this life?
It's like enabling.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I know she did have addictions. She's got multiple personalities. It's from the addictions, from the trauma, and it is something that I've done in the past, was to love her from a distance, let go of that. And I feel like I'm much farther along than I was when I was younger in letting that go. I don't know why. I don't know why it's still taking my energy.
Well, it's probably just that you like to take the action of creating distance is part of the equation. But then like resolving these pieces, like seeing this part of your own Akashic records, your own soul experience, and being able to sort of like transmute that allows it to be completely integrated. So you might feel like in the past you were successful at upholding the space distance boundaries, but there was still these pieces, and they still had to come around and be resolved. And that's probably just why it's coming up now. So yeah, it's like enabling. So essentially, as you hold, basically what I'm trying to articulate is that if you hold the fear of the full measure of the consequences, or I'll just say consequences, but I don't mean it in a judgmental way, but just the consequences of her soul journey.
Mhm.
If you hold fear around that and you try and prevent the journey from moving forward, then you're holding her in a state of almost like paralysis. But she's also holding herself. Like she could totally just disentangle from you and, advance the journey onward and like hit her rock bottom, but she's also doesn't want to, like she's afraid of her own consequences. So you're both afraid of her consequences, and you're just sort of kicking the can down the road, like the other shoe has to drop basically. And it'll be such a relief for her when it does, and for you, because you'll both be able to just like be like, oh God, that's over. Like who can move on. Kind of like, did you ever hear me talk about Killian?
Yeah.
And okay, so for example, if I don't know if it would have worked this way, but let's just say that I couldn't, when push came to shove and it was time to withdraw life support, if I hadn't been able to do it and I had kept him alive, he still would have like had to die. Like he still would have had to have the experience that completed sort of his like karmic thing that he was working out, except I just would have prolonged it for 20, 30, 40, 50, however long he lived, years. And at the end of the day, time isn't real in the way we think it is. So everything still would have been okay. But it is nice that my husband was so resolute that we had to let him go, that I could lean on his decision and we could just let him go and deal with it quickly. And kind of just rip the Band-Aid off and so that his soul is now free to move on to other adventures or other experiences without having to carry around the burden of, knowing that there was going to have to be sort of a karmic price to pay, so to speak, for that one choice that he made in the previous life. So it's a little bit like that. So when you're I think it's going to help you so tremendously to even know about that life with the fire and know about that, you know, your mom had and to be fair, it feels like the life where she was your daughter and she became a heroin addict. It feels again like it, I don't know if this is what happened to her in this life. I say again, but I don't actually know. Um, but it feels like she experienced basically like childhood, like sexual abuse. And that is where it came from.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm using words consequences and it sounds really heavy and judgmental, but I really don't feel that way. It's just sort of like the thing that has to happen in order to advance the story so that the story can get to its end and a new story can start.
How do I let that go? How do I, the fear?
It feels it feels like some kind of physical somatic practice that helps to move the energy through. And the closest two examples I can come to are EFT tapping or the EMDR, like rapid eye stuff. The sun driving me crazy. It's going to help it release from your nervous system because right now it's basically, sorry. Right now it's in your nervous system, even though it didn't happen in this life. And so kind of like, so for example, I don't know if you guys plan on having terrible, it's going to be terrible audio quality. I don't know if you guys plan on having, like, are you hoping to have children or are you both like,
Oh, I want a family. I want children.
okay.
So does he. We're just terrified.
Okay. So that is the perfect thing to use to access these fears and work through it. Because, you know, it maybe be weird to go see an EMDR practitioner and be like, yeah, so I know I have fear. This Akashic reader told me it's from a past life of witnessing my daughter go through heroin addiction and also a past life of, you know, losing my husband and child in a house fire. Can you help me work through that? Like, it's kind of hard, right? You kind of need something in this life to, as the portal to access that. So as you sort of like open yourself up to conceive and start your family and those fears come up and they feel so primal and so real in your body and your nervous system around like everything that could go wrong, like all of the potential pain, you know, all of the myriad things that get activated, that would be the time then to like take it through a tapping sequence or take it to an EMDR practitioner, but it feels like it has to be something like that that accesses your body because it is held in your tissues.
Okay. Yeah, that's incredibly helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do see a family for you. Yeah, just so you know.
That's great news. um, wow, my heart's racing. Um, do you want another question or how?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do something lighter. Um, uh, how do I better connect with my spirit team?
Okay. Okay. There's one, predominantly one, I'm not saying this is all you have, but there's one spirit that is coming forward that is like your main, the you could call it your main guide, but just the spirit that is the closest to you at all times right now. And it's a female, a feminine spirit. Feels like you've had a prior relationship. So I don't know. It kind of has a grandmother energy, may or may not be your grandmother from this life, but it feels basically like you've been walking together for a while. And the, like when I was asking, how do you connect? Like, how can you better connect? I was given the imagery of roses, like, so basically having roses in your space. And does that resonate with you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have roses. I've got bushes outside. I've got rose oil I put on all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say, is like having roses in your space, using like rose as a scent, just really immersing yourself in that, the rose frequency. And then it's as simple as almost just knowing she's there and just like having a conversation, kind of like a telepathic conversation with her. And do you know what your more predominant psychic abilities are?
Um, I think auras is one thing. And then I feel everything.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're talking to her, for example, you might not hear words or receive visions per se, but you might just like have a feeling. Have you seen the movie Frozen?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you know when Kristoff speaks for Sven,
Uh-huh.
it's a little bit like that. Like you'll just know, but it's more of a feeling. Like you'll know what she is telling you, and then you might end up saying it out loud to yourself or just repeating it in words in your mind. But her communication is going to be outside of words.
Okay. That's how I move through life is how does it feel? So it's awesome. um, wow. That's cool. The roses. I actually put on rose oil before I even came. So.
Amazing.
um, what do I have? Why I'm really interested to know if I have any past lives as a star seed or if I'm a star seed.
Yeah. And it's a Pleiadian energy. It's just a really strong, beautiful Pleiadian energy. Um, I don't know. Do you have any specific questions about it?
No, no. I was just wondering. Yeah, I don't know. I feel pulled to a lot of them. I have so many different energies that I could feel at any time or feeling. So, Pleiadian definitely hits. Do I have any Lyran?
Yeah, I also feel really clearly Lyran and Andromedan. And it feels like the I don't even really know how the mechanics of this work. But almost like you dripped down from Andromeda into Lyra and then dripped from Lyra into the Pleiadian realm, and from the Pleiadian realm you dripped into Earth. So it feels like they're a little bit more distant, but all the same source. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. That's pretty cool. I don't know if I have any. I do. So I think this was last year. You put a third eye, I think it was a transmission, on your podcast. I listened very deeply. And I had a dream that same night that I listened to your podcast, and it was with a group of people, and I didn't know who any of these people were, but we were following one man, and he was beautiful. He was light. My heart was so at ease in this dream. It was so real. Can you tell me who that was? I can't remember anything that he said. Yeah,
All you remember is that he was
beautiful. And he did speak with me, but he said I wouldn't remember anything. And he wrote something down for me that is it was a personal thing that probably not something that I can share on the podcast, but it was, I just don't know. The energy was so different. It was love. It was so beautiful.
it's hard for me to get the exact details, but it's a sound that keeps coming through. On one hand, it sounds like Mekhael or Micaiah or Micah. But ultimately, let me see if I can put this into words. There's so many pieces that I don't understand, and so many pieces that I've like, I can only understand them momentarily and then they shimmer away like ripples on a water. But it's what it feels like is it's so hard for me to say these words too. It feels like a Christ, but a Christ named Micah or Michael or Micaiah, something like that. But what I mean by Christ is this being of light that is exactly as you described, just like beauty, light, love. Unfortunately, those words have been so diluted that it makes it sound like such pithy nonsense, but I can feel it. That
like
into a light body form,
yeah.
to basically almost like deliver such a potent bolus of that energy and that consciousness that it sort of like recalibrates our consciousness and reorients us in that direction. Does that make sense?
It felt like we gathered with him to so he could heal us, is what it felt like. He did say he cleansed my auras, which I didn't even know. I had to look it up at the time. What is that? Yeah, it was he was beautiful. I'd like to see him again.
Yeah. So the best way I can describe it, like, when I say a Christ, then the reason I'm sort of stumbling is because I'm like, well, it feels so close to Jesus that there's almost no distinction, but there is a bit of a distinction, but more like I don't know how to put it. There's so many other things that it makes it really hard to talk about it, but like a brother, akin to that level of consciousness, like able to heal, able to just carry the complete frequency of love and light while holding an individuated consciousness light body form.
Okay. I was just, yeah.
What a beautiful dream.
It was such a beautiful experience. It was like the catalyst to all the other dreams. I didn't dream before, but my dreams are quite vivid now and just crazy stuff.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me. That third eye, was it the third eye meditation?
It was.
Thing I did. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so happy to hear that catalyzed all that. Woohoo. Yes.
It was. It did something inside of me where it just unlocked something that was really powerful. Yeah. No, that was an experience, and I'm still having experiences stem from that, which is really cool.
So cool.
I what can I do today to move forward?
Okay. This is going to sound so cheesy, but make a vision board. It feels really important. And that you like literally it, please don't limit yourself. Don't let your brain be like, well, I can't afford that, so it's not actually possible this year. Like, no holds barred. This is an activity purely for the fun and joy of your soul. But there is something much bigger that you're shifting into, much, much bigger. And it's like that will just orient you in that direction. Yeah, really big things are coming for you. And you're probably going to look back on like your life at the time of this reading and just be a little bit mind blown. Like, I don't know, something like 5 years from now. And it's not like you have to wait for 5 years, but it'll be almost like so completely integrated in about 5 years that you'll just feel like a whole new person and yet more of yourself than ever.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. How much time do we have?
We have just like 5 more minutes.
Okay. I know I have another question in my brain. I think we went through my list. This has been a wonderful conversation.
I'm so glad.
Let's see. So when I started in September, well, I started this journey, quit my job. I felt pulled to Reiki. Every time I tried to do Reiki on myself or others when I was practicing in the class, my whole body was on fire. My entire body was on fire. And I felt blocked. I'm wondering if that was a past life thing, if that's something we can clear.
Okay. On fire, like you were super hot, or did it feel painful and like kind of a burny feeling as well?
Not painful. I was really hot, really hot.
Yeah, there's nothing, there's no block. It's the power of that light coming through you. And you feel it so strongly because A, you were such an open channel to it, but also B, because it's coming up against, like, it was healing you as well while you're doing it on yourself, obviously, but even while you're doing it on other people. So definitely continue practicing Reiki, because that will help to move a lot of this stuff through too, as well as help to adjust you, like shift you in the direction that your soul wants you to go.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great. That's it. I mean, I don't really, I'm just amazed at this conversation. I thank you so much for your time.
Oh, I'm just so happy that the information resonated and that it feels like stuff that you can move forward with. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I'm really grateful for you too. Thank you for listening to the podcast, Jen, and thank you for submitting a review. And Thank you for your time.
It's a little happy dance.
I hope that you have an amazing weekend. And so I'll get May to send you a copy of this and it'll go up on the podcast too.
Okay. And you're free to share whatever came through.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Well, that's a wrap. I truly hope that you enjoyed the episode and that you got some good activations, insights, and inspirations from what was shared today. I want to remind you that you can review the show on Apple Podcasts for a chance to win a free 45-minute Akashic Records reading with me to be shared on the show. Just remember to screenshot your review before you submit it and send it via email to amy@thenorthstarguidance.com to be entered into the monthly draw. I want to thank my Patreon members from the bottom of my heart for supporting this show. You guys, you cannot possibly know what your support means to me. Seriously. If everything else in my business had to be shut down, the podcast is the thing that I want to keep going, and your support means that it can keep going. On Patreon, I share bonus conversations, gifts from my guests, weekly dope-ass energy reports, quarterly group hug calls, and more. To become a supporter, use the link in the show notes and head on over to my Patreon. And I want to give a shout out to May, who edits all of these podcasts, as well as the Goddess support team for all that they do to keep this operation running smoothly. Finally, I want to thank you, beautiful listener, for the valuable currency of your time and attention. I do not take it for granted. You are a powerful creator, and may everything in this podcast serve you in your highest creations. Your listenership means the world to me. Truly, truly. Without you, I would just be talking to myself. So, my beloved listener, have a beautiful day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you on the next episode.